all of the work in process between gating and the drum constitutes the drum buffer, whether sitting, being otherwise worked upon, being moved, or whatever. So stage 1, 2, 3, 4 before the drum, as you can see, and the material lying in front of the drum, all this is called the buffer. The material could be being worked on stage number 2, stage number 3, does not matter. So any material before the drum and lying in front of the drum is called the drum buffer. We have enough material to make sure that the drum doesn't starve, and it's called the buffer. Of all the work in process after the drum and prior to completion constitutes the shipping buffer. Before the drum is the drum buffer, and after the drum is the shipping buffer. The two buffers replace the multitude of local safeties that we had before and allow us to manage the process without having to schedule everything everywhere all of the time. We are not looking at WIPs lying in front of every work center resource. We have divided the whole manufacturing stages into two: drum and before and after drum. Material lying before the drum is called drum buffer, and the material lying after the drum is called the shipping buffer. What is tricky is the drum buffer. Let's look at the drum buffer in more detail. It now has half the work in process that we had before, but by design a third of that is now sitting in front of the drum. Remember what we did when we installed the detailed schedule and reduced the WIP? We were able to cut the WIP by half of the original existing. Out of this remaining half, by design, only 1/3 of that is allowed to sit in front of the drum. 2/3 is in the pipeline from stage 1 to the drum. Therefore, 2/3 of 1/2 of our original work in process is now on the shop floor, so to speak. Let me revise again. We chop the WIP by half. Of this remaining half, 1/3 is lying in front of the drum, 2/3 is lying from stage 1 to stage 4. So 1/2, half of the total WIP that existed before, and 2/3 of this of the half is what is lying from stage 1 till the drum. That means only that's equivalent to just 1/3 of the original work in process in front of the first 4 steps. Would that make daily life easier? I'm sure, you bet. We have chopped the total WIP to 1/3. Less WIP means less work, less handling, less chasing. The buffers are always sized so that about 1/3 of the work is waiting in front of the drum. And that way we can be sure that the exact work required will always be there in good time without the need for substitution. In other words, our schedule is robust. The way we have designed this drum buffer is 1/3 of the work will always be lying in front of the drum. 2/3 is distributed between stage 1 to stage 4. So we know that we are making sure that our schedule is robust and it does not fall apart. It has got enough leeway to make sure that we stick to the schedule. However, there's a little bit more to learn yet, and that is the critical part. All buffers are measured in time. They are not measured in pieces, nor jobs, or batches, or travelers, or releases or whatever. What you initially saw when I said that all the pieces lying, all the WIP lying from stage 1 till the buffer is called drum buffer, it is not measured in numbers, it is measured in hours. So what you see here is you have blue, green, orange and yellow jobs. Blue, green takes 1 hour, orange and yellow takes 2 hours. On this basis, how long is the buffer in front of the drum? Please calculate. When I say that the buffer is not measured in terms of numbers and is measured in terms of time, what you need to understand here is that the buffer in front of the drum is calculated by the number of units lying multiplied by the rate of production of each unit on the drum. What you see in front of you is green and blue units take 1 hour at the drum, orange and yellow take 2 hours at the drum. Now if you sit down and calculate the total length of the drum, it would be done something like this. You count 12 blues and 18 greens. Both of them take 1 hour. That means 13 hours will be consumed by blue and green. You have 16 oranges and 14 yellow at 2 hours each. That's 60 hours. So the 60 jobs available in the buffer will consume 90 hours of the drum time. So the buffer is 90 hours. We do not talk about the buffer in units. We talk about the buffer in time. This is the big departure from other systems to time-based system. Now, if you go further, and let's labor a critical and often misunderstood point. By definition, the materials sitting waiting in front at the drum is not the buffer. People always misinterpret only the material lying in front of the drum is the buffer. It is not so. All the material lying from the gating operation till the drum is the buffer. This is the buffer. The whole aggregate duration of all the jobs from gating to the drum measured at the drum consumption rate for those jobs. So we take all these jobs, multiply them by the rate of production at the drum. This is the buffer. So 60 jobs constitute 90 hours of buffer time. Now, this erroneous assumption of material lying in front of the drum, considered as the buffer, got entrenched and is just wrong. It comes from our old localized version of distributed safety, and we should expect better than that. Since we had distributed the safety everywhere, that means localized safety everywhere, our mindset got entrenched that only the material lying in front of the resource is its safety. We have moved away and now we're talking about the system safety. And the system safety is the safety of the weakest link. And the material lying in front of the weakest link is its safety, but also the material lying before it is also its safety. For example, what would happen if a production mix veered in extreme towards just blue and green products? That means we only had to produce blue and green products. It can happen that you have a month for which you have demand only for certain products. So we need to maintain a drum of 90 hours. Each of these items or jobs consume 1 hour. So we would have 90 jobs in the pipeline. To maintain a 90-hour buffer, I should release 90 jobs in the pipeline if the product mix is only blue or green. We would have to maintain 90 jobs in total in the drum buffer in order to protect the drum schedule. Now, what would have happened if the product mix totally moved towards orange and yellow products? The calculation would be different, and it would be, we need to maintain 90 hours of rope or buffer for drum. Each job takes 2 hours, so there will be 45 jobs. So we would have to maintain 45 jobs in total in the drum buffer in order to protect the drum. That means from the gating operation till the drum, there should be 45 jobs at any given time. And this number of jobs is dependent on the rate of manufacturing of that job at the drum and nowhere else. Everything is governed from the point of view of the drum. So the number of jobs in our example can vary anywhere from 45 to 60 to 90 units. But the drum buffer is always 90 hours in duration. And this 90 hours in duration have been arrived at by systematically looking at the total touch time of the material when it passes through the production system. And this 90 hours would have first half the WIP, and then the further calculations of buffer were done. It doesn't matter what is the number of jobs in the buffer. What matters is the processing time of all those jobs should be equal to 90 hours in duration. The product mix is important stuff, and it has much broader applications that are understood by far too few. And it is this product mix which is causing major variations in the load on machines, and sometimes we have higher numbers coming out, sometimes lesser numbers coming out. But this is how the time-based approach takes into consideration the product mix aspect of production system very smoothly. And this has a huge impact on the revenue generating capability of the process, because you're only making things which can be sold. All else being equal, people would not choose to market a product that made less money than another product. And yet that is exactly what we are doing all the time, as we learned from the P&Q example. But here is how your ability to choose the right product meshes with a time-based approach to managing operations. So if you know how much of time the item consumes at your drum, you know how much you can sell, and hence you know how much of money you're going to make. This is where the P&Q exercise comes and meshes in the drum buffer rope concept. In effect, we must also subordinate the production mix in order to fully exploit the revenue generating capability of the process. A learning we learned from the P&Q exercise. It is simple but counterintuitive, and we'll have to wait a further PowerPoint presentation on its own, or we have already done it in the P&Q exercise that we have done in other sections of the course. Okay, we are near the end. We have looked at the buffer in aggregate, but we can also monitor any single job within the process. We have now designed the buffer, but we have yet not gone into buffer management. Buffer management is a controlling part.